It began with a dare, as these things often do. Alex and his friends had spent the summer testing the limits of their courage, finding thrill in the unknown. When the group stumbled upon the story of Mistwood Lake, a tranquil body of water, shrouded in mystery and folklore, it seemed like the perfect challenge to close out their adventurous summer. Locals warned against visiting the lake after dark, speaking of disappearances and inexplicable occurrences. But Alex dismissed the tales as mere campfire stories. With a smirk, he declared, "A lake can't hurt us. Let's prove them wrong." Night fell quickly as they made their way to Mistwood Lake. The forest surrounding it was dense and silent, the kind of quiet that pressed against your eardrums. Their flashlights cut through the dark, beams of light revealing overgrown paths and the occasional flutter of startled wildlife. The air was thick with humidity, carrying the faint scent of moss and stagnant water. When they finally reached the lake, its surface was eerily still, mirroring the crescent moon and the skeletal branches of surrounding trees. A thick mist hung over the water, giving it an otherworldly quality. Alex's friends hesitated at the edge, exchanging uneasy glances, but Alex strode forward, his confidence unshaken. "See, just a lake," he said, kicking a rock into the water. The sound of the splash echoed unnaturally, as though the lake were much deeper than it appeared. They set up their makeshift camp on the shore, lighting a small fire to ward off the night's chill. Laughter and banter filled the air as they recounted their summer adventures. But the mood shifted when Emma, the quietest of the group, began to share the lake's legend. "They say Mistwood Lake is cursed," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "A long time ago, a young woman named Lila lived here. She fell in love with a traveler, but he betrayed her. Heartbroken, she walked into the lake and was never seen again. Some say her spirit still lingers, seeking revenge." "That's ridiculous," Alex scoffed, though a flicker of unease crossed his face. "Ghost stories are just stories." As the fire crackled and the night deepened, the group's energy waned. One by one, they fell asleep, leaving Alex alone with his thoughts. The silence of the forest seemed to grow heavier, punctuated by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of an owl. He stared at the lake, its surface now obscured by an even thicker fog. For the first time, he felt a twinge of doubt. Then he heard a soft, melodic humming. It was faint at first, barely discernible, but it grew louder, closer. Alex froze, his heart pounding. The sound was beautiful yet haunting, like a lullaby sung by someone lost in sorrow. He scanned the shoreline, his flashlight sweeping across trees and shadows, but there was no one there. "Hello?" he called out, his voice shaky. The humming stopped abruptly, replaced by silence so profound it was deafening. Alex took a step back, tripping over a root and falling to the ground. As he scrambled to his feet, he saw ripples spreading across the lake's surface, though there was no wind to disturb it. A figure emerged from the mist. At first, it was just a silhouette, but as it drew closer, Alex could make out a woman dressed in flowing, tattered garments. Her hair hung in wet strands around her pale face, and her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the moonlight. She moved with an unnatural grace, as though gliding rather than walking. Panic surged through Alex as he turned to wake his friends, but when he looked back at the camp, it was empty. The fire had been extinguished, and their belongings were gone. "Emma? Jake? Where are you?" he shouted, his voice echoing across the lake. The woman was closer now, her expression unreadable but deeply unsettling. Alex's instincts screamed at him to run, but his legs felt rooted to the ground. She raised a hand, and the humming resumed, more intense and commanding. The sound seemed to wrap around Alex, pulling him toward the water's edge. "What do you want?" he managed to choke out, his voice barely audible over the melody. The woman didn't answer, but her gaze held him captive. He felt an overwhelming sadness emanating from her, a sorrow so deep it seemed to seep into his very bones. As his feet touched the water, the cold jolted him back to reality. Alex broke free from the trance and stumbled backward, falling onto the rocky shore. The woman's expression shifted, a flicker of anger crossing her face. The mist thickened, swirling around her until she was obscured entirely. When it cleared, she was gone, and the lake was calm once more. Alex's relief was short-lived. The forest seemed darker, the air heavier. He searched for his friends, calling their names until his voice was hoarse, but there was no sign of them. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes. Time felt meaningless in this place. Exhausted and disoriented, Alex collapsed near the remnants of their fire pit. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight pierced through the trees, casting long shadows across the lake. Alex woke with a start, unsure if the night's events had been a nightmare or reality. His friends were still missing, and their campsite was in disarray, as though they had never been there. Desperate for answers, Alex ventured into the nearby town, where he recounted his experience to the locals. Their expressions ranged from pity to fear. An elderly man, his voice heavy with regret, said, "Mistwood Lake doesn't let everyone leave. Be thankful you are one of the lucky ones." But Alex didn't feel lucky. The memories of that night haunted him, the woman's sorrowful eyes and the haunting melody echoing in his mind. He returned to the lake many times, searching for his friends and seeking closure. But Mistwood Lake remained silent, its secrets buried beneath its still waters. Years later, Alex's story became another legend, whispered among campers and adventurers who dared to visit Mistwood Lake. Some claimed to hear the same haunting melody, while others spoke of seeing a pale figure gliding across the water. But one thing remained certain: Mistwood Lake was not just a place. It was a living, breathing entity. And those who ventured too close risked becoming part of its eternal mystery.